This is the Evolving Media Podcast, a podcast where we dive into all kinds of different areas that have to do with where the world of media is heading now and in the future. If you feel like it, please consider rating the podcast, subscribing to it, and sharing it with your social networks. It all helps us to do more episodes in the future, so everyone wins. In today's episode, my guest is Michel Reilhac. He was the head of film acquisitions at ARTE France for 10 years. He headed Holland's Submarine channel up until late last year and is the director of studies at the Venice Biennale College. He also directs virtual reality experiences and films, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. So far, the podcast has talked about a lot of different things, from reaching Generation Z to creating podcasts, from the nitty-gritty of getting viable productions off the ground to how esports are impacting the media industry, from narrative reversals to the future of documentary filmmaking. Today, we're diving into virtual reality. Welcome. Michel, so happy to have you on this podcast. Very welcome.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, let's talk a bit about the things that you are working a lot with right now. Virtual reality. It's been the thing on the horizon and the thing that everyone's been talking about and the thing that people are looking at with a little bit afraid, but very much intrigued as well. So, in your mind, virtual reality, where are we today? What's happening in the sphere of virtual reality?
What's interesting, you say a lot of people have been talking about it. It's true, but at the same time, the media interest for VR as a novelty has faded because media needs novelty all the time. They need something new all the time. So they got interested about it maybe 3-4 years ago, and then they need to move on to the next novelty, which was, let's say, the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, etc. And now they're getting tired of that and they're looking for the next thing, which could be AI, etc. So we need to distinguish, how the media are treating anything new like VR and what's happening really. The media is waiting for the new excitement that will come from VR, and that will be when VR becomes a thing with the general public, and that has not happened yet. If you look at the industry, and by industry I mean not necessarily only the entertainment industry, but the industry at large, including health, services, training, education, real estate, engineering, all of these fields are testing the use of VR like crazy. And it is happening, but it's happening without the media noticing. And when the use of VR is going to start spreading like that through all kinds of different apps and all kinds of different fields, when it will reach the social networks, by that I mean when Facebook will be pushing the use of their VR platform for social networking, all of a sudden it's going to explode again. And that will be maybe in 3, 4, 5 years. But when it will explode again, it will not be just a media fad. It will be a social need for it. And the entertainment industry will be involved in this. So for those of us who are working in the field, we are seeing the exciting news come up every week of not only new technologies, improvement in the way VR can be experienced, but also in the diversity of content, in the quality of the content, and the number of creative people, more and more, who are coming to explore what immersive media is.
And when we talk about exploring and coming into immersive media, who should be exploring it? Is it for everyone and every project? Or I'm thinking from the angle of producers and creators who might be very skilled in their original fields of profession, like documentary filmmaking or drama, whatever, but are intrigued by virtual reality and the possibility it would offer. So who should be looking at at virtual reality as a tool?
Yes, I think anyone can experiment with virtual reality. If you take the example, for instance, of cinema and love stories. Love stories have been the daily feed of themes for films forever.
Yeah.
So it's as if you said, well, I can't make a love story in cinema again because it's been done before. So in VR, it's a little bit the same. You can do anything in VR, and there's no particular subject that lends itself better to VR than any other, just because VR is about the change of paradigm in terms of the position and the experience of the viewer. The fact that VR places the viewer at the heart of the experience changes everything, and you can therefore tell the most simple, intimate love story in an immersive media, and it will be a completely different experience for the viewer from what it would be if it was a flat film, because at that point the viewer is a part of the story. Yeah. Is in it. So the thing is, when we think anyone who is interested in exploring this needs to understand that the excitement of trying out VR is about understanding the experiential nature of the relationship that the viewer has with the story world. So it is what's different. You need to ask yourself, if you're going to play with VR, you need to ask yourself, who is the viewer in that experience? What is his or her place? What is their identity? Do they have one? These are questions that are very, very new, from the script writing stage to the directing stage. It's something we never had to deal with. And we're learning, as we go, what that means and how can you script it? How can you plan it and design it? The reason why I would encourage any visual artist, film director, theater director to play with VR and try it as a new medium is because they will discover this new kind of interactive relationship between the story world and the viewer.
And that sounds like a very exciting prospect, because it ties into so many other things that are crucial to know and to embrace today as a storyteller. The notion that your audience is no longer a passive audience, it's an active audience, and they are producers in their own right as well. And to work with them to gain a stronger engagement, and with that a stronger outreach, is essential for anyone who would like to have a strong following for their stories. So
absolutely.
VR is sounds to me like it's the pinnacle of all of that, because that's where you really involve people in the middle of the story you're trying to tell.
It's true, but I would add to that not just VR does this. I think VR is the most visible expression of a deeper trend, of a deeper need in our society today, which is the need for experiences. We want to feel different things. We want to experience reality in different ways. This comes from the rise of the game culture. But in order to experience different ways of interacting with the reality, we've had games, like I said, we have VR now, but there's also LARPing, live action role play.
Oh, yes.
There is immersive theater, which is also a new trend in theater and performing arts, where the boundaries between performers and spectators spectators are completely blurred and changed, and where the spectators are invited to step into the story world and participate. You have more and more treasure hunts that involve people actively seeking for clues through a city, for instance. So you're seeing more and more, I'm seeing it, for instance, in the club scene. In the club scene around the world, you're seeing that there are more and more spaces that are being offered to the dancers, to the clubbers, to the people who attend those parties, to actually put on a show themselves, to be the ones that are doing the show. So that trend of seeking out experiences is a deep one right now, and VR is one of the most visible expressions of that.
Do you feel that the audience is ready for this virtual reality revolution? I'm asking because people I've talked to say that right now there's really no use producing for VR because it's so niche and there are so few people you can reach with a VR experience at right now. It's better to put your effort into producing for something that reaches a larger audience and wait for VR to become a mass media in a sense.
Well, the VR, as we know it today, is only maybe 4 years old. It's been around for decades as a technology, but it's only 4 years ago in March 2014 when Facebook purchased Oculus that VR all of a sudden became a thing. So it's really, really new, and you cannot expect a new technology to become a market with a business model instantaneously. That has never happened. Even, for the mobile phone industry to become as ubiquitous as it is today, it has taken a decade, for it to reach that kind of impact with the public. So it's very unfair to ask VR to be right away a significant market for people to make money with it. So it is completely normal that there is an organic sort of pace to the growth of the VR market, and that it cannot happen overnight, that all of a sudden it stands on its own feet and it can be a profitable market. So it will happen, and it is happening, but it will still take a little bit, like I would say between 3 and 5 years, for it to have a significant impact.
So if you're a consummate professional in any field and you would like to try out virtual reality, you would like to dip your feet in the water, so to speak, where should you start? Is it by finding other people to collaborate with? Is it by analyzing your own project to see if it fits virtual reality, or how to get started?
I think the best way to get started is by watching as much as possible of what other people have done. It's by getting familiar with the form through watching stuff, but it's also how you can analyze, how it's done. So, for instance, in Venice, where I run the Venice College for VR, we have a lab in which the participants, we take 12 projects each year that we develop. We have a lab where they can go every day, and we encourage them to do it as much as possible, where they can watch a lot of VR pieces. They can watch the pieces we have selected in Venice, for instance, and they do that, and they watch dozens of works. That's the best training you can get and the best exposure. So I would start by watching and experiencing as much stuff as possible, and then from that moment start thinking about what it would do for your story if you have a story you want to tell. For that, you have to start forcing yourself in a way to adjust your thinking from a flat screen, a flat rectangle, to a sphere. And you have to understand what it would mean to have your spectator at the center of that sphere for the kind of experience you want to give them. And then the third step would be thinking, how different would your story be if you were able to include all kinds of interactions between the viewer and the story? How far would you like to go in giving the viewer agency and space and interactivity with the story world and with the characters? Because that's the one thing that is so beautiful also about VR, is that not only is it immersive, but it is more and more interactive.
So it's a bit about realizing your limitations as well, or limit the possibilities you give the audience.
It's not a limitation, actually. It's an expansion, because you set your viewer into the overall architecture of your story design, of your story world, which is something you didn't really have to think of in the past, because your viewer was someone completely outside of the story world. You were offering the viewer the option, the possibility to view whatever vision of the world you have as a director. In VR, you can do that, but within that, you need to carve out a space for your viewer and decide how big that space be. By that I mean, how much freedom will the viewer have to move around the space, to look at different things, and how many options of interactivity will the viewer have? Will the viewer be able to pick up objects? Will he or she be able to open envelopes and read what's inside? How will they be able to move things around? Will they be able to open doors and find out about secret corridors that wouldn't have been revealed to him or her until they open it? All those sorts of things are very new.
It's an exciting time, and the exciting possibilities, and I really look forward to seeing what's going to come out of from Venice as well, and from other places. But I'd like to end with one question about the thing that I know that you've been working on for a while as well, where I guess that people who work on virtual reality as well would be welcome. And that's something you're working on in Kenya. Could you tell me a little bit more about the residency project that you've been working on there?
Yes, I'm fortunate enough to own with my children 2 houses on a beautiful island in the Indian Ocean as part of Kenya. The island is called Lamu. And we are in the process of transforming these houses to make them accessible to artists to come and work there, to write their script, their book, their play, whatever they want to write, or it could be photographers, composers. And the idea is that in those houses, people could come and stay for a number of weeks or days, depending on the work they have to do. They would be taken care of, and they would interact with each other. The idea is that this would be reserved for African artists from any country in Africa, and also non-African artists to mingle and share, as well as use the place as a retreat for their work. So we're talking with all kinds of different partners in the US and Europe who are interested in supporting, promoting creative artists in Africa today. And what's very exciting about it is that Lamu is an incredibly rich, culturally speaking island. It's part of the World Heritage by the United Nations. The traditions of the Swahili people there are still very much alive, and it's a place where not only the environment is beautiful and peaceful, but the cultural interactions that you can have with the people locally are incredible. And we're working on having creative writing workshops for the women of the island, and a VR filmmaking workshop for teenagers to document what it means to be a Swahili person today. So this is exciting. And the last thing to say about this, the program is called Made in Lamu, is that Africa today is an incredible hub of creativity and talent. So much is happening there that it's creatively speaking, very, very exciting to meet African artists working in the field today. So I'm very excited about this. We just finished renovating the houses, and we're now in the process of seeking out the right partners to make it happen.
That sounds absolutely fascinating, and I hope I'll be able to come there with a project at some time myself. It looks wonderful, the pictures I've seen from the place.
Yes.
Michel, thank you very much for taking the time to participate in this podcast. And if it's okay, I'll be happy to have you on later on at some point to discuss where virtual reality is heading and what's been happening.
Absolutely, with pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.